Okay,
It
well,
was.
it wasn't
You know
even
that,
illegal. Okay,
you can say that,
you
but
just
that's brought
refuted
up.
your own point. You just said that the media started bringing it up during the election year. This hit the floor of the
When did
Congress
it-
before the election year.
If it was being brought up, if it happens, right, it's going to be brought up by the media. The media, anytime anything happens, the media brings it up immediately. It was brought up the very beginning of the election year or the very end?
Listen, the image that you're trying to create that the only reason they wanted to pass this bill was to attempt to win the election because it's in the media is just so disingenuous. I mean, dude, think about it.
Come on.
Hello?
Hi, are you MAGA?
Yeah, I am actually.
Okay, how old are you?
47.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, you were of age. Don't worry. Sir, go ahead and take it away. Tell us why you support Donald J. Trump as president. By the way, this is somebody who I would consider to be the worst president of my 21 years of life, as well as the worst president of your 47. Take it away. Tell us how the hell you still support him as president.
I support him as president essentially because of the immigration situation. I feel that it went absolutely out of control. It went sideways when Biden came in. He reversed the executive orders. If you looked at the Custom Border Patrol data, it had approximately 2 million come across during the era of Trump. And Biden came in, reversed it,
Right.
and all of a sudden it was like 8 to 10 million.
Right.
That cost in 2023 $182 billion to support them, which is a lot of money for taxpayers' dollars.
So I refute that, and I can explain why to you in a little bit. But before I do, I want to ask you, what executive orders did Biden reverse or take down that were signed into law under Donald Trump at his first administration that you think caused a surge of undocumented entry into this country?
Stay in Mexico.
The Remain in Mexico policy. Do you even know what that did?
The Remain in Mexico essentially didn't allow people to come in, to my understanding.
Okay, I don't.
They
think
kept them there where they would be vetted. The other thing they also did was to get rid of catch and release.
So who did the Remain in Mexico policy apply to?
Remain in Mexico applied to anybody who was trying to come into the border.
Okay,
this is my understanding.
That's not true. Okay, so let me tell you what the let me tell you what the Remain in Mexico policy is. So the Remain in Mexico policy was an executive order signed into law by Donald Trump at his first term in 2019 that kept asylum seekers attempting to find their way into America in Mexico while their claim was being processed. First and foremost, the Remain in Mexico policy only applied to around 45,000 people from 2019 until the end of Donald Trump's first term. Second of all, asylum seekers are not undocumented immigrants. They are legal immigrants, okay? So this executive order, fundamentally speaking, had nothing and has nothing to do with undocumented immigrants in the slightest. So how the hell could repealing it cause an increase in undocumented entry?
Well, then if that were not the case, then help me understand. Well, if you look at the Custom Border Patrol data, you had encounters approximately cumulatively about 2 million. Whereas after Biden came in, he reversed all the executive orders. I'm not sure the exact specific ones, but if you look at the data after that, it went up to a cumulative amount between 8 and 10 million.
Okay, right.
And
but what I'm trying to get you to demonstrate,
what
I'm trying to get you to demonstrate here is exactly what the Biden-Harris administration did to cause the increase in border crossing. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you can't identify explicitly what they did to cause that, then you are just giving me a correlation causation fallacy, where you're attempting to blame some variable that happened in America under the Biden-Harris administration, such as an increase in undocumented entry, on the Biden-Harris administration simply because they were serving in the executive branch of our government while we saw the increase take place. We can't do that, okay? That would be like me blaming COVID on Trump just because Trump was president when COVID happened in America. That would be like me blaming the highest level of unemployment in this country in the last 100 years on Trump just because it took place in April of 2020 at 14.8%, which was obviously onset by COVID, not by him. However, right, if you're going to accept that logic, you would thereby have to accept both of the claims that I just made. So we should reject it, which means you would have to give an argument for exactly what the Biden-Harris administration did to cause an increase in undocumented entry. You attempted to do that by pointing out the Remain in Mexico policy, but you didn't really have a clear understanding of what it was or who it applied to. I clarified that it had nothing to do with undocumented immigrants. So where does that leave you with an attempt to argue that the Biden-Harris administration caused an increase in undocumented entry?
Well, I mean, I think it's not too difficult. If you look at the data, you can pick the law you want, but the reality is that the numbers were ridiculously larger. I mean, if you want to say that it was 4 times the amount in terms of the actual border crossings comparatively. If I cannot specifically tell you the exact executive order associated with it, forgive me. but I think there were a ridiculous amount. I mean, if you look up the data for executive orders that Biden reversed that occurred once he gained the presidency, it was remarkably high.
Reverse that caused an increase.
It was, well, I mean, I could, to be honest with you, this phone was just handed to me a minute ago. But it was pretty exhaustive in terms of the numbers that were reversed. The one thing I will say, though, also is that not only
individual ones that cost an increase. I listen, man. I don't like need to do this for the intents and purposes of our conversation here, but I will nonetheless, right? Because once again, you're just repeating your correlation causation fallacy. I gave you a really good reason why you should reject that, and I even gave you 2 ways that same fallacy could be applied to Trump in his first administration, saying when he was president, super high unemployment at the end of his term, when he was president, COVID at the end of his term, so on and so forth. But if you want to know what caused that increase in undocumented entry under Biden and Harris, it had to do with a handful of things. The first thing was that the legal means of entry into this country were so significantly unattainable as they had become so significantly backlogged by the implementation of Title 42, which was essentially a shutdown of immigration into this country.
That's true.
Because of the public health disorder. Sorry, not public health disorder, just public health crisis, okay? And because the legal means of entry into this country were even more unattainable, that only gave more incentive for undocumented entry. And then when you comprise that with the fact that we had Trump saying that the borders were wide open and you could come right on in, and also blocking any attempt made by the Biden-Harris administration to do anything about it to make the legal means of entry into America more attainable, such as they did when they attempted to influence the bipartisan border bill through Congress. I feel like that is obviously what caused an increase in undocumented entry. And if you want to argue otherwise, feel free. But once again, that is necessarily going to include you telling me what the hell they did to cause it. And so far, you've been unsuccessful in an attempt to do so.
I would disagree with you on a few fronts. Now, first off, when you're talking about Title 42, but there also was the HR 2 plan. When the border started taking off, I mean, you had 1.8 million, I think it was in the first year under Biden. I think that number went up to about 2.1 million the following year. The third year, which is really the one with the exclamation point, was 2.3 million. And when you collectively look at that, that's a lot of crossings. The entire time, the Biden administration
did not lift about the crossings.
Wait a minute. I'm not done. It's not really, actually. It's the data that's actually talked about just about every article. Because if you look at Brookings EDU, there's an article about why the bipartisan plan didn't work. It was very specific that there are 2 things going on, but one of them had to do with that. The fact is Biden did not lift a finger. The only reason he lifted a finger was in the final year, which was an election year, coincidentally, they started putting together this bipartisan plan. Interestingly, everybody blamed the Republicans and Trump for it. Yet, about a year before, there was also the HR 2 plan, which the Republicans put in front of the desk of Schumer. Schumer ignored it. Why? Because it was addressing the issue that the country itself was looking at and seeing how many people were coming through. Mm-hmm. And as I said, you also didn't address the fact that the $182 billion, and that's a conservative number to my understanding in terms of how much it costs. Multiply that times 5 years.
Exactly.
That's $1 trillion in terms of cost to take care of immigrants.
Conservative.
That's a lot of money, my friend. That's a lot of taxpayers' dollars. And honestly, it's very concerning.
Okay.
And I also can tell you, a lot of that is abused.
You find yourself in a corner.
Not really.
So the reason that you find yourself in a corner is point number 1.
Mm-hmm.
You just went on to repeat while we saw really high levels of crossing. How many times have I re-explained to you at this point what the nature of a correlation causation fallacy is, and how you can't basically associate something that happens in America as to be blamed on the president without any identifying information insofar as how they caused it. Didn't I run through that conceptually speaking, and how I could apply that to Trump in his first term by blaming the pandemic on him, how I could apply that to Trump in his first term by saying that he caused a super high level of unemployment, and how that's just not the way that we should go about reasonably addressing American politics, and how an administration does or doesn't cause something. I mean, shit, it's literally such a common mistake that is made by individuals that it has its own name, a correlation causation fallacy, yet you then ignored that 3 times and then continued to repeat, well, the border crossings were high. And then when I asked you, well, how did the Biden-Harris administration cause them to be higher? You gave one half-assed attempt to name the Remain in Mexico policy. You didn't know what it was. I informed you that that had nothing to do with undocumented immigrants. You kind of ignored it, then just said you didn't need to blame it on them. And then now you're talking about the bipartisan border bill. You're saying, well, the bipartisan border bill failed for a handful of reasons. Point number 1, I just asked you what those reasons are. Seemingly you haven't articulated them. And then you also talked about HR 2. Yeah, the reason why HR 2 didn't pass is because it was an incredibly conservative bill that made no concessions to the Democrats. See, in order to pass good policy through Congress, you're going to have to work together with both sides, the left and
Sounds
the
familiar,
right.
though, doesn't
and you know who you know what bill worked with both the left and the right? The bipartisan border bill that was drafted by a Trump-endorsed Republican by the name of Lankford. Lankford was one of the 10 senators that actually supported his attempted coup of the government in 2020. So he's MAGA and included many concessions, like giving the border wall significantly more funding to build more of it than they did in his first term. And of course, that's something that the Democrats didn't want at all, right? I mean, it literally caused a 25-day government shutdown under Trump's first term, but they were willing to concede that to get the Republicans to pass good legislation. And then your last claim there was that Donald Trump fundamentally had nothing to do with the failure of the bipartisan border bill. Shit, he said he did. He said he torpedoed it. He said he got that bill to fail. And you still won't believe him. That was reported on by The Hill in 2024. Oh, another point that you made there is that this was a last, half-assed attempt to do something about it in election year. No, Lankford started drafting this bill in late 2021. Then it hit the floor of the House in 2023, which, by the way, wasn't an election year. And then, I'm so sorry. And the last point you made, now this is actually the last point you made, is that our federal government expenses something like $182 billion on undocumented immigrants per year. That's just unequivocally false. Where you're getting that from is a handful of far-right sources that want to include potential expenses on the citizen children of undocumented immigrants that are born in this country as undocumented immigrants themselves, and including things like what we spend on their education or illegal food stamps for the citizen children. So in order to yield that figure, you have to classify citizens as undocumented immigrants, which isn't just disingenuous, but is so entirely intellectually lazy and doesn't account for the $100 billion per year that undocumented immigrants pay per year in taxes and the $1.1 trillion through $1.7 trillion trillion dollar contribution of all undocumented immigrants in this country to the GDP per the American Immigration Council. But what I want you to do at this point, because I just said a whole lot there, because you brought up a whole lot in your last statement yourself, is to address the fact that you cannot argue the Biden-Harris administration caused an increase in undocumented entry because you can't tell me what they did to cause it. B, I want you to address and tell us why the bipartisan border bill was a failure and how Donald Trump didn't torpedo it even though he said he did. C, respond to my critiques of H.R. 2 and how it made no concessions to the left. And D, address the fact that your $182 billion figure that you said is expensed on undocumented immigrants every year is complete and total bullshit.
Well, number one, I didn't get to finish my point. What I was trying to convey to you in terms of that bipartisan plan that you made reference to, why did it suddenly, materialize in the final year, in the election year?
God, dude, you didn't even listen. If you listen to what I said, I told
heard
you that
what you said, but
you heard what I said, then you would have heard what I said when I told you.
You carried
on. It hit the floor of the House in 2023. Thank you so much. It hit the floor of the House in 2023. Thank you.
Okay, so 2023.
Yes.
And the election year was what year?
2024.
Exactly.
Right.
So
it's not
this
the
is
election
coming
year,
in basically on the heels of an election year.
Okay, so now we're shifting the goalposts. Now we're going
not shifting. We're just being realistic.
That is what shit. Yes, you said. Well, why did it hit Congress in an election year? Then I'm like, it didn't hit Congress in an election year.
The very beginning of the election year.
Well, it hit Congress the year before an election year. Basically the same thing.
Well, when did we hear all the press on this? When did we hear all the press? When was everything politicized in the press? The media picked it all up. It was the election year. It was all picked up.
Right. Okay. Well, it wasn't even okay. You just refuted your own point. You just said that the media started bringing it up during the election year. This hit the floor of the Congress before the election year.
If it was being brought up, if it happens, right, it's going to be brought up by the media. The media, anytime anything happens, the media brings it up immediately. It was brought up the very beginning of the election year or the very end?
Listen, the image that you're trying to create that the only reason they wanted to pass this bill was to attempt to win the election because it's in the media is just so disingenuous. I mean, dude, think about it.
Come on.
Lankford, the person that drafted the bill. Listen.
Take it or leave it. It's what they told the Republicans.
The person that drafted the bill. Listen, Lankford, the person that drafted the bill, was one of the only 10 senators that literally supported Donald Trump's attempted coup of the 2020 election. Lankford had so much disdain towards Biden that he was willing to ratify a false president in the 2020 election on January 6, 2021. So why the hell would Lankford then turn around and bend the knee to Biden and help him draft legislation just to get something done before the election? That's completely made up. He started, as I already said, drafting the bill in late late 2021 and it hit the floor of Congress the year before the election in 2023. You're disingenuous. You don't know what you're talking about. And the only reason why that bill failed is because it was a good bill that Donald Trump didn't want to pass at risk of then losing the election. And it's time you come to terms with that. And if you disagree with me, then tell me what the problem with the bill was.
Mm-hmm. The problem with the bill? Well, first off, they said take it or leave it. They said this is the best the bill will be. So there was no negotiation at that point. It was a take it or leave it. So they said we're going to leave it. Second, the problem with the bill was it really didn't address a lot of the issues. It didn't address the current number of people who had been let into the country at all. It completely dismissed that. It didn't enable ICE. It didn't say we have to deport these people. Additionally, as you might recall, it said there was a magic number in there. If 5,000 come through, at 5,000, that's the magic number, we can shut it down. Oh, okay. So let's let 4,000 come through a day. Do the math on that. 5,000 would be 1.8 million a year. A little bit less with 4,000 a day. That's a lot, guy. So it really was not addressing the point. The point was too many people were coming through.
I have a question. What is the current daily or weekly cap of immigration into America that grants the president special authority to shut the border down?
I'm not sure what the number is right now, but we know the numbers aren't the same.
It's because there isn't one.
Right. And what's happening right now? But what's happening right now?
There's no current cap on the amount of immigration into this country that gives the president special authority to shut the border down. In fact, that 5,000 per week cap was the first suggestion of its kind to allow a president special authority to get it done. But I mean, I don't even really think that the cap of like 5,000 daily or weekly crossings, whatever it was what made the bipartisan border bill good. Okay, what I think made the bipartisan border bill good is the fact that it was going to spend billions of dollars on hiring significantly more judges to run courts along the southern border to expedite legal claims of immigration, residency, citizenship, green cards, and asylum, which would have made the legal means of entry into this country significantly more attainable, which would have naturally disincentivized undocumented entry. And by the way, okay, when I asked you why the bipartisan border bill was bad, why you agree with it being shot down, you basically said, well, it wasn't enough. Okay, right? Well, this is like saying if you were starving and you were really hungry and somebody came up to you and offered you a sandwich, that you would reject it and throw it on the ground and say, well, I want a bacon wrapped filet, even though I'm starving and the sandwich would help me and it's better than nothing. It's not enough. Therefore, I don't want it. That makes absolutely no sense, sir. The bill was a step in the right direction, regardless if you're a Democrat or a Republican. You can't cope with that fact, and you just want to suck up to Trump, even though he's the man that torpedoed it, and he admitted to it too.
I'm glad the plan was torpedoed, honestly. Independent of Trump, I think the plan was terrible. And the reason I'm glad I wouldn't want that sandwich, because I know I'd get a better sandwich in a year.
Then
that wouldn't be automatic.
Wait, why can't you just have the sandwich and the better one in a year?
Because then you'd be stuck with that plan because it would have already been passed by the Senate, by the Congress. If they had approved that plan,
so we'd be stuck with what's actually in the bill. Okay, so this means that you think that there are things that were actually in the bill that were bad. So what were the things that are actually in the bill that are bad?
The number who could come through.
Oh, okay.
The number who could come through.
So now you're saying.
I thought it was ridiculous.
So now you're saying
that's close to 2 million
granting
a
the
year.
president special authority at 5,000 daily or weekly crossings to shut the border down is bad. Well, I already informed you.
It was daily.
Now I already informed you. I thought I already informed you that the president doesn't have any special authority to shut the border down at any point, regardless of what the number of daily or weekly crossings are, because that bill never passed. So I have a question. What's better? In your mind, do you think it's better when the president has some authority to shut the border down at a particular level of crossings, or no authority at all to do a complete shutdown, regardless of the level of crossings?
It doesn't matter. You know what's going to go back and forth. It's going to be executive orders. Whoever's in the
You're not answering my question. I want a direct answer to my question. Shall I repeat?
Your direct answer is, of course, it's better to have something in place in terms of keeping things shut. Yes, but the reality is,
okay. So then you just agreed that bill passing is better than that bill not passing, even in accordance with you and your goals.
The preface of your question was, is it better to have nothing in that type situation? Yes, but it's all things being equal. Executive orders is basically going to serve both presidents. Whoever the next president is, if it's a Democrat, they'll never get it passed. They're going to have executive orders. So at this point, we're going to be a country where every 4 years, executive orders, depending who's in power.
I don't understand what executive orders don't have anything to do with this dialogue. I think that right now you're trying to muddy the waters. The fact of the matter is, I asked you what exactly in that bill you think is terrible, and then you said granting the president special authority to shut the border down when there's 5,000 daily or weekly crossings, and you said that specifically is terrible. We then went over how the president doesn't have any special authority to shut the border down at any point now, right? So what's better, the president having the special authority to shut the border down at 5,000 daily or weekly crossings, or the president not having any special authority to shut the border down, regardless of what the daily or weekly crossings are? And you agreed it's better for the president to have that special authority at 5,000 crossings compared to not having it at all at any level of crossings, meaning that you actually don't think that provision of the bill was terrible in contrast to what we would have had and have now because it didn't pass, which is the president having no special authority at all. So you actually conceded that the provisions of the bill were progress and steps in the right direction in accordance with your goals.
No, I actually disagree with what you're saying.
Okay, what exactly did I say there that you disagree with? What exactly did you quote me?
All right. What I disagree with is you asked me, is it better to have some kind of plan that keeps some kind of check in terms of numbers that come through? And I said yes. But the issue is simple. If you know that Biden actually, when this whole thing didn't plan, what did he do? Did he control the border? Did he, yes or no?
Biden has nothing to do with the dialogue at all.
He did. But this is the context here.
We'll happily talk about Biden once we're done talking about this provision of the bipartisan border bill. I mean, this is literally the nastiest pivot of all time, right? We're talking about a particular subsection of the bipartisan border bill and why you think it was bad, right? And then I absolutely walked you through how it's actually good, even in accordance with your own goals, right? And then you're like, no, Dean, I completely disagree with you. I was specifically quote what I said, right, that you disagree with. And then you're like, sure, Dean, I'll specifically quote what you said that I disagree with. And then you didn't quote anything that you said. In fact, you brought up somebody who I haven't even talked about yet, who was Biden, right? Dude, so no but Bidens. Drop the pivot. Okay, explain to me precisely, right, how my line of thought there on the bipartisan border bill and that provision of granting the president special authority to shut the border down if there's 5,000 daily or weekly crossings is good, even in accordance with your own goals. Don't pivot, sir. Makes you look like a bad debater.
No. It's not that I'm pivoting. It's the context. Well, his context.
Context
Context to what I'm referring.
What are you referring
say a number,
to? Let's just get clear. What are you referring to?
I am referring to having a hard number in terms of a plan that would keep people on the other side, not allowing a certain number through. That's ideal. However, what I'm trying to convey is I don't like the number. I don't think 5,000 is a reasonable number. And the reason I mentioned Biden, the reason I mentioned executive orders is because the numbers will always be controlled by executive orders. And the reason I bring up Biden is because he had to do that.
I've tried to re-explain this to you multiple times now. This is going to be my last time trying to explain this concept to you. If you don't get it this time, I'm going to kick you and move on to the next guest, right? Because we're just simply not getting anywhere because of your lack of an ability to understand the simple concept that I'm conveying, okay? For the very last time, sir, okay, I really want you to listen to me. I understand that you're telling me that you think that number of 5,000 is unreasonable, right? And that number should be, in your mind, significantly lower to grant the president special authority to shut the border down, right?
I think the number is unreasonable, yes.
Exactly. I understand that's what you think. We all understand that's what you think. But what I'm saying is that even in accordance with your goal here, still yet giving the president that special authority to shut the border down when there's 5,000 daily or weekly crossings is significantly better than not giving the president that authority at all, regardless of what the number of crossings are. Right?
If that's the only number that you possibly could have in a situation without executive orders, and if executive orders could be better, I would disagree.
So you disagree that giving the president the special authority to shut the border down at 5,000 crossings is better than not giving the president that special authority at all?
Yes, because executive orders are going to trump that. That's what happened. That's what Biden ended up doing. That's why I was going down that path afterwards regarding Biden. How do you stop everything? He did executive orders, which everybody told him to do. So you don't have to have this plan. Just put in executive orders. He waited, and he finally did. And he's like, hey, look, the numbers went down.
And then it's back to Biden. I appreciate you for coming up. I'm going to move on to the next guest. Dude, I'm sorry. He just couldn't debate me, right? He couldn't stay on subject. He couldn't have a conversation about that one really terrible point that he made. So then his automatic refutation was, but Biden. Oh my God, dude. Listen, man, when you get caught on a point, okay, and I want to make this incredibly clear to all the Trump supporters in here. When you get caught on a point, you can't just go, but Biden. Oh my God. He tried his best though, so I'll give him that.